Hello, my name is Gary, and I was raised in the western United States, so I'm a native English speaker. I hope that you will enjoy this YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us.
The 38 Letters from J D Rockefeller to His Son by J D Rockefeller, 1839 to 1937.
The 12th letter. Hell is full of good people. August 11th, 1918. Dear John, today on my way to play golf, I encountered a long-awaited challenge. A young man proudly passed my car in his shiny Chevrolet. He stimulated my old man's competitive nature, and he ended up looking at my car's ass. It makes me as happy as I am beating my opponent in the mall. John, it's my nature that never fade away. So, I say those who accuse me of never-ending greed are wrong. The truth is, I don't like money. I like making money. I like the good feeling of winning moments. Of course, the feeling of letting others lose can sometimes touch my heart, but doing business is a fierce competition, and there is nothing more ruthless than the determination to force someone out. But you can only avoid a tragic fate by finding ways to defeat your opponents. It is undeniable that if you want to succeed, you have to more or less sacrifice. If you want to win, you have to resist the idea of feeling sorry for others. You must know that hell is full of good people, and the pain of failure is part of the business war. We are all suffocating our opponents, and without the determination to fight to the end, we are only qualified to be losers. Frankly, I don't like competition, but I try to compete. Whenever I meet a strong opponent, the competitiveness of my heart burns, and when it goes out, I reap victory and happiness. Mr. Pott once brought this pleasure to me, and it was great. The war with Mr. Pott was due to a mistake of mine, a mistake made with good intentions. In the 1970s, oil was concentrated in a small area in northwestern Pennsylvania. If a network of oil pipelines was built there to connect all the oil wells, I would only need a valve to control the flow of the entire oil area. I could control the mining volume, thus completely dominating the industry. But I was worried that long-distance transportation by pipeline would cause anxiety and fear of the railway companies I cooperated with. So in order to protect their interests, I have never started that plan. However, the Pennsylvania Railroad had tricked me. They tried to replace me and put the oil refining industry under their control. They were trying to choke us by incorporating the two largest pipelines in the oil region into their own rail network. And the person who shouldered this mission was Mr. Pott, president of the Empire Transportation Company, a subsidiary of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Just sitting and watching the opponent as the potential opponent's strength increases is weakening my strength and even subverting myself. I am not that stupid. My belief is to get there before anyone else. I quickly recruited the shrewd and capable Mr. O'Day to form the American Transportation Company and launch a self-defense counterattack against the rival company. Thank God our hard work paid off. In less than a year, we controlled 40% of the oil transportation business in the oil area and suppressed Mr. Pott's attack. But this was only the beginning of my battle with Mr. Pott. People who can stand out in this world are those who know how to find their ideal environment. If they can't get what they want, they will create it by themselves. 2 years later, a new oil field was discovered in Bradford, Pennsylvania. Mr. O'Day quickly led his men to the place that inspired millions of people to make a fortune by laying pipelines to new oil wells day and night.
But the guys in the oil field were all crazy and unrestrained. So no matter how hard we worked and how hard we tried, we could not meet the needs of transporting and storing oil. I didn't want to see the hard-working oil producers dig their own graves and destroy themselves. I asked O'Day to warn the oil producers that their extraction capacity had far exceeded our transportation capacity, and they must reduce production. Otherwise, they would extract the black gold, and what came out would become worthless black soil. But no one accepted our good intentions and advice, and no one appreciated our efforts and condemned us for daring to take away their oil. Just when Bradford's oil producers were at their emotional peak, Mr. Pott took action. He first demonstrated to me in our refineries in New York, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, buying out our competitors' refineries. Then he started to seize territory in Bradford, laid pipelines to transport Bradford crude oil to his own refinery. I admired Mr. Potts' courage and wanted to accept the challenge that he wanted to shake my dominance in the oil refining business, but I had to get him out of the oil refining business. I first called Mr. Scott, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I told him, frankly, that Mr. Pott was a poacher. He was breaking into our territory, and we had to stop him. But Scott remained stubborn and determined to continue Pott's robbery. I had no choice but to confront this mighty enemy. First, we terminated all business dealings with the Pennsylvania Railroad. I directed my subordinates to transfer the transportation business to the two major railway companies that firmly supported us and asked them to reduce the freight rates to compete with the Pennsylvania Railway and weaken its power. Pennsy Railway was the largest transportation company in the United States, and Mr. Scott was a giant in transportation power, and they prided themselves on never being conquered. But under my three-dimensional oppressive play, they had to surrender. To fight against me, they reluctantly gave huge discounts to our competitors. In other words, they paid for someone else's services, and they resorted to an unpopular tactic of firing employees and cutting wages. Scott and Pott didn't expect that this would soon lead to punishment. In order to vent their dissatisfaction, angry workers burned hundreds of their fuel tanks and more than 100 locomotives, forcing them to make emergency loans at Wall Street banks. As a result, the shareholders of Pennsy not only did not receive dividends, but the stock price also plummeted due to the duel with me, and their pockets became increasingly cleaner. Mr. Potts was worthy of being a soldier. He had earned the rank of a colonel in the midst of life and death. He had an admirable willpower, so he still wanted to continue to fight with me when the outcome was already decided. Finally, he decisively lowered his mighty head and sent someone to tell me that he hoped for peace and to stop the oil refining business. I know that Colonel Potts wanted to prove that he was the great Moses, but unfortunately he failed. He failed completely. A few years later, Pott gave up the desire to confront me and became a hard-working director of one of my companies. Scotts and Pott and the like always considered themselves as noble and arrogant, so my heart is dancing to successfully tame these arrogant, strong donkeys. John, I like to win, but I don't like to use any means to pursue victory. Victory at any cost is not a victory. The ugly competition methods are disgusting. It is like a prison and may never be overcome. Even if you win one victory, you may lose the opportunity to win in the future. And following the rules does not mean your chances of winning are diminished, but it means using a moral way to achieve a clear victory. I hope you can do this. Love, your father.